औज़ुबिल्लाहिमिनश्शैतानिर्रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन, मैं हूँ आपकी मेज़बान फ़ाइज़ा नक़वी इस दुआ के साथ कि जहाँ रहें खुश रहें, आबाद रहें, अल्लाह की बेशुमार रहमतों बरकतों उसके फ़ज़ल और करम के साए में रहें। परवरदिगार आप सबको सभी अपनों समेत दो शर से महफूज रखे, दो जहाँ का खैर कसीर आप सबकी जो नस्लें हैं उनके मुकद्दर में करे। तमाम मज़लूमीन जहाँ बिलख़ुसूस लबनान, फ़लस्तीन, ईरान, यमन, शाम, इराक़ और हमारे सूडानी बहन भाई, सोमालिया के लोग और जो हमारे कश्मीरी बहन भाई हैं, इसी तरह पाराशनार में और हिंदुस्तान के मुसलमान और जहाँ-जहाँ भी इंसानियत और मखलूक़ात इस वक़्त जंग और जदाल और ज़ुल्म और बर्बरियत का शिकार हैं, जिन्हें हम जानते हैं, नहीं जानते हैं, पहचानते हैं, नहीं पहचानते, कहीं भी मखलूक़ात खुदा अज़ियत, दुःख, रंज व गम में है। परवरदिगार उनकी नुसरत, उनकी मदद फ़रमाए, उनकी हिफ़ाज़त फ़रमाए और उनको इस अज़ियत और तंग मुश्किलात से जो है वो निजात दे और दुश्मन को, दुश्मन इंसानियत को और दुश्मन खुदा को और दुश्मन जो इन जंगों को जो मुसल्लत करने वाले दुश्मन हैं उन सब को निस्त नाबूद करे, उनके शर को उनकी तरफ पलटाए और हमें हमारी मौजूदा आइंदा नस्लों को हमेशा हमेशा वक्त के इमाम से अपने अहद को पूरा करने वाले, वादों को निभाने वाले और जो सबकत ले जाने वाले, अहदो पैमा पूरा करने वाले और मुश्किलात को अबूर करने वाले जो अवान और अंसार होते हैं, जो इमाम की नीयत और इरादों को पूरा करते हैं और उनके लिए ज़मीना साज़ी करते हैं और शुजा और बहादुर दलेर और बाबसीरत होते हैं, उन अवान, उन अंसार और उन सब कतले जाने वाले साथियों में शामिल फरमाए जो अपना अहद वफ़ा करते हैं और वक्त के इमाम के ज़हूर में ताजील फरमाए। हमें उनके सच्चे मुखलिस तरीन साथियों में शामिल फरमाए, उनके दिल को हमसे खुश और राज़ी फरमाए इंशाअल्लाह आमीन। नाज़रीन, आज पीर का दिन है, 13 अप्रैल है। उम्मीद और दुआ करते हैं कि इस आज के दिन का आगाज़ अल्लाह के ज़िक्र से, उसकी हम्दो सना से, उसकी जो नेमतें हैं उन पे शुक्र अदा करते हुए और इन खूबसूरत ज़िंदगी के लम्हात में जो सबसे चीज़ कीमती है वो एक वक्त है। वक्त की भी कीमत बहुत ज़्यादा है, इसलिए क्योंकि ये वो वक्त है जिसमें आप अपनी सांसों के ज़रिए से, अपनी मेहनत के ज़रिए से, अपनी शऊरी एफर्ट्स के ज़रिए से अपनी रब की कुर्बत को कसब कर सकते हैं, मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद की कुर्बत को कसब कर सकते हैं, कुरान की कुर्बत को, अहले बैत की कुर्बत को कसब कर सकते हैं। सो ये इस नेमत पे भी हमें शुक्र अदा करना चाहिए कि हमारी आंखें काम करती हैं, ज़हन काम करता है, हाथ पैर काम करते हैं, हम सांस ठीक से ले पाते हैं, हमें दिन में जो है खाने को 2 वक्त ही सही या 3 वक्त ही सही है, जितना भी जो भी जिसके पास है उतना मिलता है और हमारे पास ये ज़िंदगी है जो अल्लाह की कीमती नेमत है और ये दुनिया जो अल्लाह ने हमारे लिए बनाई है, जिसके एक वे से देखा जाए तो जिसके मिल जाने से भी इंसान को कुछ नहीं मिलता और इसके खो जाने से भी इंसान कुछ नहीं खोता, इन द सेंस कि अगर कुर्बत खुदा इंसान को मिल जाए या अगर ना मिले, दोनों सूरतों को अगर हम सामने रखें, क्योंकि हदफ इस दुनिया का अल्लाह तक पहुंचाना है, ये एक मीन्स है, एक ज़रिया है अल्लाह तक पहुंचाने का कि जिसमें अल्लाह ने हमें भेजा है। तो हम पूरी कोशिश करें कि इस ज़रिए को ज़रिए की तरह इस्तेमाल करते हुए अल्लाह का शुक्र ज़रूर अदा करें इंशाअल्लाह। अभी हम बढ़ेंगे मौसम के हाल पर और देखेंगे कि मौसम आज किस तरीके से है। ओवरऑल तो खुशगवार है, प्लेजेंट है, सनी है। लंदन में रहेगा 7 डिग्री सेल्सियस, मैनचेस्टर में 5 डिग्री सेल्सियस और एडिनबरा में रहेगा 4 डिग्री सेल्सियस, जबकि कार्डिफ में 6 डिग्री सेल्सियस और नॉर्दर्न आयरलैंड में 3 डिग्री सेल्सियस रहेगा। उम्मीद और दुआ करते हैं आपकी ज़िंदगियों के मौसम, गिरदोनवा के मौसम खूबसूरत, पुरसकून और जो है खुशगवार होंगे और आप अपनी ज़ात के मौसमों से दूसरों को भी खुशगवारी, ज़िंदगी, उम्मीद, यकीन और अल्लाह पे भरोसे की तरफ बढ़ाने में मददगार होंगे। क्योंकि कभी-कभी यूँ होता है कि दूसरों के ख्वाबों को हम अपनी जो कम हिम्मती से, बेबसीरती से और जिसे बदगुमानी से, वहम से और जिसे कहते हैं ना बदज़न होने से ख़राब कर देते हैं कि एक इंसान बड़ी मेहनत से, बड़े जज्बे से, बहुत शौक़ से और ज़ौक़ से अपने ख्वाब की तरफ बढ़ रहा होता है, मेहनत कर रहा होता है, कोशिश कर रहा होता है और हमारा कोई एक ही जुमला, एक ही बात उसको डिमोरलाइज़ कर देती है, डिरेल कर देती है। हम कोशिश करें कि हकीकत दिखाते हुए ऐसी हकीकतों को ना दिखाना शुरू कर दें या इस अंदाज से ना दिखाना शुरू कर दें कि इंसान की हिम्मत, उसका जज्बा ही ختم ہو جائے. جذبے جو ہیں وہ پرورش پاتے ہیں اگر ان کو تھوڑی سی یقین کی حرارت ملتی رہے اور سچ کی حرارت ملتی رہے. تو سچ پہ ہمارے جذبوں کو قائم رہنا چاہیے، حقیقت پہ قائم رہنا چاہیے، محض صرف خوابوں پہ نہیں رہنا چاہیے، مگر خوابوں کو حقیقت پہ مبنی ہونا چاہیے، اور خواب وہ ہونا چاہیے جو انسان کو دیکھتی آنکھوں سے نظر آتے ہوں، اور جن کو جیتے ہوئے انسان زندوں کی طرح جی سکتا ہو، اور جن کو جیتے ہوئے انسان کی زندگی کی اٹھان بہت بہترین اور باعمل اور بامعرفت ہو. ہم کوشش کریں کہ اپنی زندگیوں کو وقت کے امام کے لیے بہترین متحرک فعال بنائیں، اور اپنے گرد و نواح کے معاشروں کو، اپنے آپ کو جو ہے وہ پاک و پاکیزہ رکھیں انشاءاللہ. ہم ابھی ایک چھوٹا سا کال میں آپ کے ساتھ جو ہے وہ شیئر کرتی ہوں، اور اس کے بعد ہم انشاءاللہ آگے بڑھیں گے اور دیکھیں گے کہ جس طرح سے قرآن کریم میں بھی حکم ہے کہ ہمیں کوشش یہ کرنی چاہیے کہ ہماری وجود سے، ہماری ہاتھ سے، ہماری زبان سے اور ہمارے کسی بھی عمل سے دوسرے انسانوں کو تکلیف نہیں پہنچنی چاہیے. تو ہم پوری کوشش کریں کہ ہماری ذات دوسروں کے لیے مرہم اور سکون ہو، اور ہمارے لہجے، ہماری گفتار، ہماری آواز کی جو اٹھان ہے کبھی وہ دوسروں کے دلوں کو توڑنے والی نہ ہو. اور دوسری چیز یہ بھی ہے کہ اگر ہم تھوڑے حساس بھی ہیں تو ہم کوشش کریں کہ اپنے آپ کو سخت موسموں کے لیے خود تیار کریں، نہ کہ کسی کی چوٹ ہمیں تیار کرے. ہمیں خود پتہ ہونا چاہیے کہ میں چونکہ بہت سینسٹیو ہوں، بہت حساس ہوں، بہت ڈیلیکیٹلی چیزوں کو لیتا ہوں یا لیتی ہوں، اور میں بڑی جلدی جسے کہتے ہیں نا ڈپریشن میں آ جاتا ہوں، یا سیڈ ہو جاتا ہوں، یا میرے ذہن کوئی چیزیں افیکٹ کرتی ہیں، تو اس کے لیے مجھے خود اپنی ذات کے ساتھ کھڑا ہونا پڑے گا، اور اس کے حوالے سے مجھے اپنے آپ کو مستحکم کرنا پڑے گا کہ کسی کی بھی بات کو میں نے پرسنل نہیں لینا ہے، کسی کی بھی رائے کو اپنے پرسنل نہیں لینا ہے، کسی کے بھی بتائے ہوئے اچھے اور برے کو اپنے لیے پرسنل نہیں لینا ہے، بلکہ خود سوچنا ہے کہ کیا واقعی یہ کوالٹی ہے یا نہیں ہے، اور اگر نہیں ہے تو میں ڈیولپ کر لوں، اگر اس میں امپرومنٹ چاہیے تو میں امپرومنٹ کر لوں، اور اگر ہے تو بھی اس کو ایک حد میں رہتے ہوئے خدا کا انعام سمجھتے ہوئے اس پہ شکر ادا کروں. ہم ہوتے ہیں ظاہر حساس بھی ہوتے ہیں، سینسٹیو بھی ہوتے ہیں، مگر کئی دفعہ ہم یوں بھی ہو جاتے ہیں کہ ہر بات کو ہی اپنے سر پر حواسوں پر طاری کر لیتے ہیں. وہ بھی رویہ ٹھیک نہیں ہوتا، وہ انسان کو بیمار کر دینے والا ہوتا ہے، کیونکہ پوری دنیا تو ہماری مرضی سے نہیں چلے گی، نہ ہی ہم چلا سکتے ہیں. تو اس حوالے سے ہمیں یہ چیز کو دیکھنا چاہیے کہ چونکہ دنیا تو نہیں بدلے گی ہمارے لیے، اور وہ دنیا زندگی وہ یعنی کتاب ہے یا وہ سبق دیتی ہے جو اس نے پڑھائے نہیں ہوتے ہیں، اور وہ سخت ہوتے ہیں، اور وہ تھپڑ ہوتے ہیں، وہ تماچے ہوتے ہیں، اور وہ چوٹیں ہوتی ہیں کہ جو انسان نے تصور بھی نہیں کی ہوتی ہیں مگر اس کو پڑھتی ہیں. مگر انسان کو ان چوٹوں کے لیے خود اپنے آپ کو تیار کرنا چاہیے، اور خود کو مضبوط کرنا چاہیے کہ کسی کی کوئی بات مجھے زخمی نہ کرے، کوئی ناکامی مجھے مایوسی کے اندھیروں میں نہ ڈال دے، اور کوئی وقتی شکست مجھے کسی مشکل میں نہ ڈال دے. یاد رکھیں، ہمیشہ ایک اصول زندگی کا بنا کے رکھیں، اور وہ یہ ہے کہ گرتا وہی ہے جو کوشش کر رہا ہوتا ہے، ہارتا بھی وہی ہے جس نے کوئی ایفرٹ کی ہو، ناکام بھی وہی ہوتا ہے جس نے کوئی قدم لیا ہو. اب جس نے کوئی کوشش ہی نہیں کی، قدم ہی نہیں اٹھایا، اس نے نہ گرنا ہے، نہ ناکام ہونا ہے، نہ چوٹ کھانی ہے. تو اس لیے جو بیٹھا ہوا ہے اس نے کیا کھانا ہے؟ کچھ بھی نہیں کھانا. تو یہ اپنے لیے ہمیں کمفرٹ زون نہیں بنانا چاہیے. اور دوسری بات یہ ہے کہ ہر مایوسی کی بات جو ہمارے تک پہنچتی ہے اور ہمیں ڈی مورلائز کرتی ہے، یا ہمارے اندر سے بھی اٹھتی ہے کہ نہیں میں تو فارغ ہوں، میں تو فالتو ہوں، میں تو بیکار ہوں، میں تو یوز لیس ہوں، میں تو کچھ بھی، کسی بھی طرح کی کسی کے اندر کوئی بھی نیگیٹیوٹی اپنے لیے جنریٹ ہوتی ہے، تو یہ یاد رکھیں کہ آپ اللہ کے بندے ہیں اور سب سے قیمتی ہیں. اگر آپ قیمتی نہ ہوتے تو اللہ نے آپ کو بنایا ہی نہیں ہوتا، کیونکہ ہم کچھ نہیں تھے، اس رب نے ہمیں بنایا ہے. تو یہ شکر گزاری کی بات ہے. اور اگر کوئی نیگیٹو، ضروری نہیں ہے کہ ہمارے پاس بہت مال و متاع اور ظاہری چیزیں ہوں تو ہی ہم قابل عزت ہیں. ہمیں خدا نے بنایا، یہ کیا ہماری عزت کے لیے کافی نہیں؟ بس اس بات پہ قائم رہیں، اور کسی بھی مایوسی کی بات کو اپنے دل پر اثر اور دماغ پر اثر نہ لانے دیں. اس چیز کو ذہن میں رکھتے ہوئے ہم اصول رکھیں کہ نیگیٹیوٹی جو بھی آئے گی وہ شیطان کا شر ہے، وسوسہ ہے. اس کو ہم نے یقین کے ساتھ، اللہ پہ توکل کے ساتھ اور ذکر خدا کے ساتھ لا کہہ دینا ہے، نہ کہہ دینا ہے، اور اس کے خلاف کھڑے ہو جانا ہے، اور اپنے ساتھ کھڑے ہو جانا ہے کہ نہیں، मैं अल्लाह का बंदा हूँ, अल्लाह मेरे साथ है, तो मुझे परेशानी की ज़रूरत नहीं है। मैं कोशिश कर रहा हूँ, मैं इम्प्रूव हो जाऊँगा, और अगर नहीं होऊँगा तो चलो थोड़ा-सा टाइम लेके हो जाऊँगा। मायूसी की कोई बात नहीं, चलते रहना जो है वो दरिया की सिफ़त है, और दरिया जब चलता रहता है तो उसका पानी शफ़ाफ़ रहता है। तो हम ये देखें कि हम इसी तरह अपने आप को चलता रखें, मुतहरिक रखें, फ़ाल रखें। बहरहाल अभी हम बढ़ेंगे हमारे बहुत ही प्यारे सेगमेंट जो कि हिदायत वॉक का सेगमेंट है, और उसमें देखेंगे कि मौलाना गुलाम हुसैन अदील साहब कौन से खूबसूरत पैगामात हमारे लिए लेकर आए हैं। बढ़ते हैं हिदायत वॉक की तरफ।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम वरहमतुल्लाहि वबरकातुहू। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मदिन व आले मुहम्मद व अज्जिल फरजहुम व सहहिल मखरजहुम व अहलिक अदाहुम। एक बहुत ही इरफानी और नूरानी एक आरिफ ने मुझे आज से तकरीबन 30 साल पहले हम एक मजलिस सैयद शुहदा में थे, और ये शेर असल में शेख सादी आलल्लाह मकामहू का है। ने मुझे ये कहा कि बर्ग दरख्तां ने सब्ज़ दर नज़र होशियार, हर वरकश दफ्तरीस्त मारिफत किरदगार। ये जो दरख्तों के सब्ज पत्ते हैं, बर्ग दरख्तान सब्ज, जो अक्ल से सरशार, होशियार और जिम्मेदार लोग हैं, जिन्हें अल्लाह सुब्हानहू व तआला ने शऊर दिया है, उन लोगों के लिए ये दरख्तों के पत्ते जो है ना, उसका एक और पत्ता होता है। ये पत्ते से एक चीज़ का पता उन्हें मिल जाता है। बर्ग दरख्तान सब्ज़ दर नज़र होशियार, हर वरकश दफ्तरीस्त मारिफत किरदगार। ये दरख्तों का हर जो ये लीव है, ये पता है, मारिफत परवरदिगार अल्लाह सुब्हानहू व तआला की मारिफत का एक बहुत बड़ा ख़जाना है। इंसान तो गौर कर, अल्लाह सुब्हानहू व तआला ने ये जो फितरत है, ये नेचर है, ये रंगोबार, ये पत्ते, ये गुलजार और गुलिस्तान, ये जो रैनाई आप देख रहे हैं, शगुफाई आप देख रहे हैं, इस्लाम ने एक ख़ास जो जमालियाती तसव्वुर है, तसव्वुर मैं नहीं कहूँगा बल्कि इसको कहूँगा कि इस्लाम ने जो ये जमालियाती हकीकत को बताया है, इंसान ज़रा गौर करे, इंसान ज़रा समझे। आपको अगर कोई एक मामूली सा ये पेन भी गिफ्ट में देता है, पेन है, पेंसिल है, बाल पॉइंट है, आपको जब गिफ्ट में मिलता है तो आप क्या करते हैं? थैंक यू करते हैं। आप क्या करते हैं? आप सिर्फ उसका शुक्रिया अदा करते हैं। आपने कभी सोचा है कि अल्लाह सुब्हानहू व तआला ने ये जितना ये निज़ाम है, ये कायनात है, ये नेचर है, ये फितरत है, ये ज़िंदगी है, उसने हमें हयात दी, उसने हमें कितनी तरह की उसने फैकल्टीज़ और उसने हमें नेमतें, क़ुव्वतें अता फरमाई। क्या हमने कभी सोचा है कि ऐसी ऐसी उसने कितनी खूबसूरत आँखें दी, ज़ुबान दी, ये और फरमाया कि हमने तुम्हें कितना खूबसूरत अहसन तक़वीम तुझे बनाकर इस कायनात के हवाले किया। लक़द ख़लक़नल इंसान फ़ी अहसन तक़वीम, बेहतरीन अंदाज के साथ अल्लाह सुब्हानहू व तआला ने इंसान की खिलकत की। फिर इंसान के लिए ये सारे का सारा जो निज़ाम है, یہ زمین انسان کے لیے، یہ آسمان انسان کے لیے، یہ شجر انسان کے لیے، یہ ماہ و ماہتاب انسان کے لیے، یہ آپ دیکھیں نظام شمسی انسان کے لیے، نظام قمری انسان کے لیے، ساری کی ساری یہ خدمت گزار ہیں۔ صبح کو دیکھیں، شام کو دیکھیں، سحر کو دیکھیں، یہ صبح کو دیکھیں، سارے کا سارا سسٹم، سارے کا سارا نظام اللہ سبحانہ و تعالیٰ کا یہ انسان کی خدمت گزاری کے لیے۔ انسان نے کبھی سوچا ہے کہ یہ زمین ہے، آسمان ہے، یہ شمس ہے، یہ قمر ہے، یہ زندگی کے سارے وسائل ہیں، یہ زندگی کے سارے اسباب ہیں، اے انسان یہ سارے کے سارے تیرے لیے ہیں۔ اللہ سبحانہ و تعالیٰ سوچا ہے کہ وہ کتنا خوبصورت ہے۔ اللہ جمیل یحب الجمال، وہ کتنا خوبصورت ہے۔ یہ جتنا آپ جمالیاتی خوبصورت نظام آپ دیکھ رہے ہیں، اس سارے کے سارے کو اللہ سبحانہ و تعالیٰ نے انسان کے لیے خلق کیا، انسان کی تکامل کے لیے، انسان کے کمال کے لیے، انسان کو اپنی طرف بلانے کے لیے۔ یہ جو ہدایت واک ہے، ہم اس کو چاہتے ہیں کہ یہ ہدایت واک یہ اللہ کی طرف واک بن جائے، اللہ کی طرف سیر و سلوک کا ایک ذریعہ بن جائے، جس نے سب کچھ ہمیں عطا کیا ہے۔ ہم کچھ نہیں تھے، اس نے ہمیں سب کچھ بنا دیا۔ حل عطا علی حین من الدہر لم یکن شیئا مذکورا، کچھ نہیں تھا، اسی نے ہمیں سماعت دی، اسی نے ہمیں بصارت دی، اسی نے ہمیں زبان دی، اسی نے ہمیں کان دیے، اسی نے ہمیں عقل دی، اسی نے ہمیں شعور دی۔ کتنا اس کا تھینک یو کرنا چاہیے، کتنا انسان اس کا تھینک یو کرے۔ ایک قلم انسان کو دیتا ہے، آپ اس کا تھینک یو کرتے ہیں۔ اس نے آنکھیں دی، زبان دی، ناک دی، قوہ شامہ دیا، قوہ عقلیہ دیا، قوہ فہمیہ دیا، یہ ساری کی ساری طاقتیں تو اسی نے عطا کی ہیں۔ ہم اس کا کتنی دفعہ تھینک یو کرتے ہیں۔ اگر ہمیں جس سے محبت ہوتی ہے، ہم چاہتے ہیں اس کے ساتھ بات کریں، ہم کتنی دفعہ اللہ سے بات کرتے ہیں، کتنی دفعہ اللہ سے راز و نیاز کرتے ہیں، کتنی دفعہ اللہ سے دعا کرتے ہیں۔ اسی وجہ سے اگر آپ چلے جائیں، اس نے اتنی نعمتیں دی ہیں، اتنی نعمتیں دی ہیں، ان تعدوا نعمت اللہ لا تحصوها۔ اگر آپ اللہ کی نعمتوں کا شمار کرنا چاہیں تو آپ کبھی شمار نہیں کر سکتے۔ دنیا کے بڑے بڑے چارٹر اکاؤنٹنٹ آ جائیں، اللہ کی نعمتوں کا شمار نہیں کر سکتے۔ یہی چیز ہے کہ آپ دعائے عرفہ میں بھی دیکھتے ہیں، میرے مولا 40 سے زیادہ اعزاء کے نام لے کر، ہر ایک پہ شہادت دے کر، ہر ایک کا شکریہ ادا کرنے کے بعد ایک جملہ فرماتے ہیں کہ دہر پہ دہر گزر جائے، زمانے پہ زمانہ گزر جائے، تیری کسی ایک نعمت کا بھی شکریہ بجا لاؤں، دیٹ از امپاسبل۔ یہ نہیں ہو سکتا ہے کہ تیری کسی ایک نعمت کا بھی شکریہ ادا کیا جائے۔ مولا امام زین العابدین علیہ السلام کیا فرماتے ہیں؟ آف بلسانک عالم اشکرک، کیا اس گنگی زبان سے تیرا شکر ادا کیا جائے؟ آج ہم اتنا سوچیں ضرور کہ جس نے ہمیں اتنی نعمتیں دی ہیں، اتنی اس نے ہمیں باؤنٹیز اور بلیسنگ اللہ سبحانہ و تعالیٰ نے عطا کی ہے، ہمیں اس کی معرفت کی طرف جانا چاہیے، ہمیں اس کا شکر گزار بننا چاہیے۔ یہی سوچ اگر ہم میں آ جائے تو یہ ہزاروں سالوں سے بہتر ہے انسان کی زندگی سے کہ یہ سوچ آئے، کہ یہ سوچ کیا ہے اسے اللہ کی طرف لے جائے، اللہ کے اس جمال کی طرف لے جائے، اللہ کے اس کمال کی طرف لے جائے، اور جمال و کمال کے جو مظہر ہیں ان کی طرف لے جائے، کہ جن کے صدقے میں یہ زمین باقی ہے، جن کے صدقے میں یہ آسمان باقی ہے۔ اللہ سبحانہ و تعالیٰ آپ کو اجر دے، صحت دے، سلامتی دے اور معرفت دے۔ پروردگار ہم سب کو اللہ نصیب فرمائے، اور اللہ ہمیں اپنے مخلصین بندوں میں ہمارا شمار فرمائے۔ میں سمجھتا ہوں کہ ہم چلتے ہیں اپنے اسٹوڈیو کی طرف، اور تاکہ اس پروگرام کو مزید کنٹینیو کیا جا سکے۔ والسلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ۔
ویلکم بیک ناظرین، ہم حاضر ہوئے ہیں کے بہت ہی خوبصورت پیغامات کے بعد، اور یقینی طور پہ یہ جو پیغام ہے یہ صرف سننے کے لیے نہیں ہے۔ اگر ہم ان کو چھوٹے چھوٹے موتیوں کی طرح، چھوٹے چھوٹے دیپ جس طرح ہوتے ہیں نا، کہ ایک چھوٹی چھوٹی کینڈل لائٹس کی طرح اپنے ساتھ رکھیں، तो हमारे अंदर रोशनी फैलती जाएगी और उस रोशनी से हम आगे रोशनी बढ़ाते जाएँगे। क्योंकि जो इंसान के अंदर होता है, वो ही वो आगे बढ़ा पाता है। अगर हम अपने अंदर नूर और रोशनी और पाकीज़गी को रखेंगे, तो यकीनी तौर पे नूर, रोशनी और पाकीज़गी, मोहब्बत, ईमान, इल्म, मार्फत, तकवा, हिदायत और खुलूस, खुदा की समत, वो रिफ्लेक्ट करेंगे। लेकिन अगर हम अपने अंदर दिखावा और झूठ और मुनाफ़िक़त और हर वक़्त एक दुनिया के कॉम्पिटिशन में रखेंगे और असली दुश्मन से जो कॉम्पिटिशन है उससे हम दूर रहेंगे, तो फिर ज़ाहिर है जिस तरह हम भटकते चले आए हैं, भटकते चले जाएँगे और ये फिर सिलसिला जो है वो नस्लों तक फिर इसी तरह जारी और सारी रहता है। बिलख़ुसूस ख़वातीन को इस चीज़ पे बहुत ख़्याल रखना चाहिए कि वो अपनी ज़ात को जो है ना अंडरस्टैंड करें, अपने अंदर को अंडरस्टैंड करें और सेल्फ डाउट में ना आएँ, सेल्फ क्रिटिकल इस अंदाज़ से ना हो। कोई भी इंसान वैसे तो ना हो, क्योंकि हर कोई हो जाता है डिफरेंट सर्कमस्टांसेस के हवाले से, और अपनी ज़ात पे भरोसा रखें, अल्लाह पे भरोसा रखें और अपनी ज़ात के साथ खुद खड़े होना सीखें। किसी भी चीज़ को के साथ अटैचमेंट नहीं होनी चाहिए। किसी भी चीज़ को हमें सिर्फ़ और सिर्फ़ एप्रिशिएट करना आना चाहिए, उससे मोहब्बत से रहना आना चाहिए, उस चीज़ को जो है ग्रो करने में उसको हेल्प करना आना चाहिए। मगर उस चीज़ में इस तरह नहीं हो जाना चाहिए कि वो आपकी शख्सियत को, आपकी इंडिविजुअलिटी को या आपके हुनर को जिसे कहते हैं ना कि वो कुंद कर दे या उसको वो लगा दे, क्या कहते हैं कि जिस तरह लोहे को ज़ंग लग जाता है। तो हमें अपने जो पैशन्स या जो खुदा ने आपको गिफ्ट दिए हैं, उनको भी परवरिश करना चाहिए, जैसे हम अपने गिरदो-नवा की परवरिश करते हैं, अपने गिरदो-नवा को सजाते हैं। Now we will be moving on to our very important topic today, and we do have very prestigious guest with us. Inshallah, second guest will also be joining soon. Sayyid Mohsin Abbas is with us. Assalamu alaikum, Mohsin bhai. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really honored to have you on the show. Even after having so much busy schedule, you have taken time out for us. I'm really grateful for that. So the topic we are about to discuss is related to the failed negotiations between Iran and US. Like with just within 21 hour, there was no conclusion to those negotiations. So what was that stage was all about? I mean, if we look at the whole situation, there were so many things on which they were having some kind of agreements, but just on nuclear and Strait of Hormuz, I guess you may shed some better light on that. They couldn't reach on any conclusive decision. So how do you see this whole stage, and what are your key analysis and key points you can think of, like, okay, these are the key points we really need to take out of this whole stage, and this is something going to happen. So how do you see this negotiation table and everything which has been set out over there in Pakistan, and the role of Pakistan, Iran and America, and their you can say their body language, their the way they were communicating with each other was comparatively different than in general the way they do, especially America. So what difference do you see in the whole situation?
Firstly, I think that the US going into this negotiation had to take into account the fact that what they'd intended to do to Iran to bring it to its knees had failed, essentially. They haven't managed to do the various targets, if you like, in any real complete form. Yes, they bombed Iran. Yes, they managed to attack a lot of the infrastructure, and yes, there is loss of life. But in terms of decapitation of the legitimate government of Iran, no, they've managed to kill and assassinate people, but not actually affect the infrastructure, because the depth of that infrastructure is far more powerful than they thought, obviously. So the first failure was that. The second failure is that, of course, they've not got Iran to back off in terms of its right to keep the nuclear material that they have, whatever level that material is. It's within the limits of international law, and they're entitled to keep it. So the nuclear uranium, if you like, they were after, they failed to do anything about that. They've also failed to protect Israel or protect the Zio-Arab puppet regimes in the region. So they've had 17 or so US bases completely decimated. And of course, many troops which have been killed, which are being hidden. So these are just some of the failures. They've also failed, of course, to destroy Iran's ballistic missile capacity. That's still intact and was still firing full guns blazing once the ceasefire was asked for, and it was the Americans who actually pushed for the ceasefire, not Iran. Of course, they've then gone into these negotiations with a confusion. There was an Iranian 10-point plan and there was a 15-point plan given by the Americans. Somehow Pakistan managed to bring them together, even though there was, on the surface, certainly in terms of tweets that were sent out, things that the Abbas Araghchi was sending and what the Americans were saying, was all couched in a lot of confusion. So it was clear that not everything was rosy, and nobody really had any expectations for these negotiations to be very fruitful. I think the Iranians certainly didn't think so, but I believe that they went into them because they want to be not only seen to be open to peace at every point, which is what they have. They've always been in a position where they've tried to come to a conclusion. It's the Americans that twice during negotiations have actually gone on to attack Iran. Two occasions before that's happened, and now, of course, on the back of these negotiations, one hopes there isn't another military attack. Although what we're seeing straight away is the response of America with a blockade and with some games being played with a couple of destroyers trying to evidently open up the Hormuz Strait, which is largely still in control of the Iranian forces. Now, all of this has happened as a spin-off to these negotiations, but of course, the Americans aren't going to get uranium enrichment controlled. Iran will do as it likes on that. The Lebanese ceasefire, which side of things, which was violated, was another reason why the Iranian delegation wasn't even leaving Tehran until it was discovered that they had got Netanyahu to ease up on the genocidal carpet bombing that he'd begun as soon as he knew that negotiations were going on. So something like 100 plus 150 or so missiles thrown within a space of 10 or 15 minutes across Lebanon was his response. But that calmed down, and I think that gave the green light to Iran to go ahead. There was also a rumor that Iran had been given some of the money that the US has embezzled. There was certainly reports, which I can't confirm, but something like $6 or $7 billion may well have exchanged hands. There were tweets which indicated that had happened at a high level. In any case, these are all part of the sideshow. The reality is that the Americans weren't in a position to force the Islamic Republic of Iran to do anything they wanted, because Iran has successfully seen off much of the American attack, and they've also caused huge damage to the American interests in the region. So these are just some of the issues that arise around the negotiation. Of course, the ceasefire is still in place. I mean, much as though it can be argued that the Israelis violated it, the reality is that attacks on Iran aren't actually taking place right now, and Iran is also not firing in a mass way against American interests. So there is this kind of ceasefire. It's unlikely to last, because there's something bigger going on here than simply, of course, the Iran, US and Israel war. You know, as if anything could get bigger. Well, it can. There can be bigger issues, and I'll probably go into those next rather than giving you a whole mantra. But that's my take on the negotiations. Iran went in with its eyes open. It's come out rejecting American bullying, and the Americans are now going away, and they're going to have to think about it. And anything can happen. There could be a resumption of negotiations. The Americans have seen that their military thumping of Iran doesn't get the required effect. So now they're going for this blockade. And I think that's where the attention will turn now. And there's a lot going on around this blockade, which I can say, which I'll open up with you as well.
That's really good. So, Mohsin bhai, how do you see this fragile ceasefire? Because at the moment, as you are mentioning that, like they are not trying to wage a war on Iran at the moment. I mean, ceasefire is still going on, and they are not doing anything from both sides. It's like comparatively peace. So, especially if we look at the international media and internationally global. If we look at the whole situation from global perspective, how do you see that the China, Russia, and other world powers are looking at this whole situation? What kind of pressure does US and Iran have regarding these negotiations or ceasefire or the war? Because if this ends like in the sense that this ceasefire ends, then they might go into the war, and if it happens, this is going to be like a third world war or something. Or what is your viewpoint on this point? How this global world is watching at the whole situation, and what kind of pressure America and Iran are facing from you, and how did they view this whole negotiation process?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. This is the one that is very difficult for people to get their heads around, because I can't remember a war where so much has been happening, so much is going on all at the same time. And it's very hard to often process things. And news is coming thick and fast, and circumstances are changing. But we have to first of all understand, I think, to understand the geopolitical international situation, you've got to draw back and look at the things which are immovable. So one of the things is the immovable object is the US and its desire to control routes and resources. The maritime power that the American Navy has been exposed in the Hormuz because Iran has a real tight grip there. And whilst everybody may be thinking, okay, that means the American Navy is impotent and it's useless, the reality is that actually, if you look at in a broader context, before they kicked off the war in Iran, the Americans had used their Navy to strangle Venezuela. And why? Because they wanted the access to the oil and whatever resources they had in that regard. So they achieved that stranglehold. They talked about Greenland and also its control of that area. And they've also been attacking Russian ships, evidently, around the world, even around the Baltic. It's almost like the American Navy is being deployed to try and cause trouble for the flow of oil, gas, LNG, such things around the world. All of this points to the targeting of China, because China is the one that needs these resources far more than anybody else and relies on them. In fact, I think is a heavy load that they put on the Hormuz Strait and getting LNG and oil, etc., crude oil from that region. So if it is prevented, like for instance, the Americans now want to blockade the Hormuz Straits, clearly that's a direct challenge to China, because most of the resources that are coming out of there are going to either India, China, and these kinds of manufacturing nations. Right? So their economies rely on this. So this tells you that the US is trying to create a control over all of the resource and the routes for those resources to be passed around the world. And of course, it's on a wider level, definitely going to draw the Chinese in further. The Russians, of course, are also being squeezed. Their Nord Stream pipelines were the first thing that the West attacked and destroyed. And of course, that brought the EU to its knees, energy-wise. And guess who profited from that? When America controls chokes these points of resource access, this oil production, etc. What happens is that Americans who do have oil and do have their own gas supplies, etc., the EU or the Europeans are now increasingly having to go to American shale gas to go for their oil. So America is actually trying to drain the markets that the West Asian, if you like, suppliers have in a way a hold on across the world, and he's actually trying to divert it and control it itself using the Venezuelan and their own supplies, of course, and to some extent that's working. I mean, to a great extent it's working. The Europeans have been turning to the Americans for oil at 3 times the price, albeit, which makes us become even more of a subservient colony to the US here in Europe, for instance. But it also affects the rest of the world, because if they now put a blockade on Iran, and if that blockade isn't broken, then that means that through the Hormuz, India, Pakistan, and China, and a few other nations, Philippines, I think, included, Indonesia, they were given full rights to take oil, etc., supplies out of the region, whilst it was the allies of the Americans, the axis of Zionism, as I call it, they have been restricted, and Iran hasn't been allowing them. Now, this tussle is going to go on. The battle between Iran controlling the Hormuz and the US controlling the Hormuz is definitely on the cards, and that is a battle which it will, if it continues for a protracted time. People like Professor Keane, a very well-known economist, says that famine could strike within 6-7 months across the world, because the fertilizer supplies that come through that Hormuz are also a major factor that we have to consider. It's not just oil, it's not just gas, there are other things. And of course the food supply going in to West Asia and to those countries would also be affected. This would also, of course, affect Iran's supply of oil and gas around the world. It would affect its revenues, which at the moment were boosted because the Americans had unsanctioned Iranian oil on the high seas, as far as I know, and they'd unsanctioned Russian oil. So there's this really fascinating battle over resources. All of it ultimately does affect China the most, because it's the big manufacturing base and it's America's biggest rival economically. And the whole business of the rise of BRICS, the rise of the Eurasian axis, the multipolar world, this kind of shift from the dollar, all of this is America fighting back against that process. And we're seeing it played out, of course, in West Asia, and particularly against Iran. Iran has far more going on, of course. There's a much bigger grudge they've got against Iran because of the ideology and because of the possibility of it influencing West Asia culturally, spiritually, and otherwise, and to give, to basically make that region independent and perhaps even ultimately move towards a sort of United States of Islam or Muslims. That's the ultimate dream, that the dream of dreams would be that Iran triggers a revolutionary spirit across the Muslim world where they can take back their agency, become sovereign nations, become much more united economically, politically, and become a force in the world, such a force that it can't be dealt with in the way the Americans have been dealing with it, i.e. raping resources, bombing, killing, murdering, initiating wars. That can only be stopped, I think, with the unity of that central part of the world, which is predominantly Islamic. So there's a lot of other things going on here, but the resources and the routes, the routes for those resources getting around the world, I think that is the main game in terms of what's really going on here.
Thank you, Mohsin bhai. We do have with us Aga Sayyid Arif Raziz as well. Assalamu alaikum, Aga. Thank you so much for joining us in this important discussion, and really grateful for your time as well. And I would like to take your viewpoint as well on the whole negotiation, you can say, process, and who are the key beneficiaries of these negotiations, for instance, and how do you see the role of Pakistan, especially the way India view it? If we look at their media, they are just like going, mad or something, in the sense that Pakistan has achieved something, I don't know what, but you may shed better light on that. So how do you see this whole negotiation process between US and Iran, and what are the key takeaways from that, from your point of view, like whatever you analyze while looking at the situation from Pakistan perspective, US perspective? But the most important thing we really need to look upon regarding the situation.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As far as the negotiations were concerned, we are all aware that the negotiation did not go through well and it failed. Eventually, it failed for two primary reasons. One was one demand from Iran was not acceptable to US, which was nuclear, that Iran should completely lay their hands off nuclear, even hand over the enriched uranium to them. And the second was from Iran's side, which was ceasefire on Lebanon also, which in both these cases, we need to see why US did not agree to, why Iran did not agree to nuclear, and why US did not agree to stop to have a ceasefire in Lebanon. Now, the Lebanon ceasefire, if you take, is out of control of US in a way. It's in the hands of Israel and Netanyahu right now, and they are running it. Even if we have seen this entire war, it looks like, at times Trump is driving it, but then Netanyahu is driving it. But in fact, it's the Zionist lobby which is driving it, which is sitting inside US. Those are the corporations who are driving this war. And they don't want this to end in Israel because it's a big disgrace for Netanyahu. The only thing for Netanyahu now is Lebanon. Otherwise, he has lost the war. Very brutally, he has lost the war. Though the media is not showing anything what has happened inside Israel, inside Tel Aviv and other places across Israel. There has been very severe blows inflicted to people. They don't talk about death. They only talk about injuries, wounded people. That also very limited they are expressing. But there is a big damage over there which has been done in terms of casualties as well as the infrastructure damage. Not just civil infrastructure, but their military infrastructure, their governmental infrastructure, their intelligence infrastructure has been badly damaged. And the safe face saving for Netanyahu is only to do something in Lebanon and go like a big criminal over there, barbaric person over there, and just do these war crimes with innocent civilians and children and people over there. And he wouldn't stop so easily because that's the only thing for him. Second thing is about nuclear, which Iran did not accept. Now a question comes up, which is coming up from everyone, is that why Iran is hard on nuclear? Whereas there was a fatwa before by my late Shaheed Ayatollah Khamenei as well that we are not going to use nuclear for bombing people. Okay, so there's a question on the other side, like why US is so much insisting on ending Iran's nuclear when it is clear, even in these 40 days of war, if you see, Iran has fought with humanity, with values. It has not targeted any civilian sites. It has not targeted any innocent people. Fine, it has targeted hotels, it has targeted commercial buildings, but all those were places where US and Mossad agents were sitting over there and war planning was going on, such kind of locations. Okay. So more or less, Iran has fought a military war, not a civilian war. Whereas Israel has been brutally bombing the civilian site. More than 125,000 homes have been destroyed in Iran. A massive damage, nearly almost you can say that 500,000 people have suffered very badly in terms of deaths as well as injuries. So when Iran has not taken any rude step, any rough step over here, even in these 40 days war, so is US not aware that Iran would not be using nuclear on any time for such kind of things? When they have not done this in this situation, will they use nuclear and destroy a nation, destroy a complete generation or a civilization by using nuclear? That's really looks like, it's impossible. They also know that Iran is not going to do like this. So why are they insisting so hard on ending nuclear in Iran? That's a question over here. Then why? Hell-bent Trump is like, okay, I don't want nuclear Iran. Why? Because they're afraid, West people say they're afraid that Iran might hit Israel with a nuclear. No, Iran will not hit Israel with a nuclear in an offensive manner. But the actual story is that Israel wants to do a nuclear attack on Iran and end the civilization. And this is something which they expressed very clearly on last Tuesday night, Monday night, when they had a plan that, okay, tomorrow is the last day, and that's it. We're going to bomb brutally, and end the complete Iranian civilization. This was the subliminal message which was sent by Trump, that we are going to use nukes over here. So that was very clear that it would have been a nuclear attack which was being planned over there. And even if you see the media trend, the moment Trump announced that this is 24 hours and I'm going to destroy the Iranian civilization, if you look on the media, specifically on YouTube, you would have seen a lot of videos popping up about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All history about Hiroshima, history about Nagasaki, nuclear effects, what is nuclear, all these things. So it was all of a sudden YouTube also boosted those content which was previously also present over there and got it on top, which was to create a fear and send a message that yes, this would be a nuclear attack which would be going on. Hence, since US wants to attack Iran by using nuclear, they are afraid that if they use nuclear, if Iran also has nuclear, they will retaliate. Then it is tit for tat. And Islam says eye for eye, years for years, life for life. So then definitely they will retaliate. If Tel Aviv bombs Iran with nuclear, then definitely Tel Aviv will also face a nuclear bomb from Iran, provided Iran has it. Now that is where they are concerned big, that whether Iran still has nuclear or Iran is capable to enrich it to a level of making an atom bomb. They are quite afraid, and they have mixed intelligence report that Iran already possesses enriched nuclear, which could be used anytime. And this is where Trump doesn't want to compromise on nuclear at all, to allow Iran to do even nuclear enrichment for energy. And this is the biggest bottleneck and a blocking factor for this negotiation. That can Iran compromise on nuclear? It would be a big risk for Iran to compromise on nuclear, because if Iran does that, then you are giving a free hand to Israel to just go and bomb Iran anytime with nuclear ended, because they are monsters. They are not human beings who are living in Israel. Zionists are not human beings. And you would have seen various reports. What they are doing with the Palestinian prisoners now is like, your heart just bleeds over here when you see what they are doing with them. This is completely inhuman, monstrous, beastly acts which they are doing with these prisoners over there. And the way they are torturing them, it's just, they can do anything. And Imam Khomeini used to say very nicely a sentence that to the Iranian nation, that US, America, would do everything they can do. Don't think that they will not do something. Don't think that they have humanity or they will stop from doing something. The only thing they will not do is where they are afraid of doing in terms of retaliation. See, they attacked Iran. They attacked Iran brutally because they were not afraid that Iran would retaliate in such a manner. And this retaliation gave a big setback to them, that what has happened over here are completely different from what they were predicting and what they were expecting, that bombing the house of the leader and finishing him off, and then everyone will come out on the street and the regime will change. 24 hours, Iran will become US. So all these dreams were shattered because Iran retaliated. This is where, wherever they have this fear that Iran could retaliate, they will refrain from doing that. But if they don't have fear, they will go ahead and do. Imam used to say they'll do anything they can do, they will do. Something they are not doing means they are afraid. They cannot do it now for certain reasons. And that's what. They cannot use nuclear for certain reason. And that reason is that Iran also, they are afraid, is possessing or can enrich and reach that particular level. And they want to end this. And if Iran agrees to end nuclear, believe me, take my words, they will accept all other terms. All other terms they will accept right now in this situation. To get out of this, they will accept it. So this is the part of the negotiations which have taken place. Now coming to the role of Pakistan. See, Pakistan was in a dilemma. Pakistan has got a military contract, a defense contract with Saudi Arabia, that any attack on Saudi, we are going to defend you, and vice versa, both sides. Okay. So there was definitely some attacks done by Iran on Saudi refineries, and Bin Salman wanted Pakistan to get into this. And the field marshal even planned for this, to that they might have to step into this war against Iran. And they invited all the Shia scholars for a meeting, and it was a very hard talk over there, which was given to the Shia scholars. And Alhamdulillah, the Shia scholars responded very in a brave manner. And they then realized that if they step into this war, it would be a big civil issue for Pakistan, which will happen. Big civil unrest would happen inside Pakistan, and then Afghanistan is there, then India is there. Everyone will take advantage. So for Pakistan, it would be suicidal to get inside a war that to against Iran. If they go against US, fine. People are with them. Nation is there. Just like in Iran, when your people support, you can fight any war. Your people would be against you. You're getting into a war where 95% of your nation is against you in this war. So Pakistan had to find a way out to appease and keep their neighbors also satisfied, specifically Saudi and even UAE and Kuwait and Qatar. And because they have loans from them, which they have to return, even it has been Saudi has asked them to return the loans now. So how do they manage this situation? This was the way out for them, that to get into a state where they become negotiators and try to establish peace over there. Now, Iran accepted this only because it was Pakistan. If anyone else would have stepped in for this offer, Iran wouldn't have accepted this because Iran sees a big potential. Not Iran, I would say the Islamic Revolution sees a big potential in Pakistan. Pakistan is that nation, if it awakens, and that awakening has started after the shahadat of the supreme leader, where 36 people gave their life on the same day when the leader was martyred. This is something big, which didn't happen anywhere in the world. They came out to burn the US embassy. They burned the United Nations office in Gilgit. So they were really going on the extremes to take revenge of the leader in their own country, which really shocked the world as well. And that and even Iranians were very appeased and pleased by the way Pakistani nation reacted to this. And out of respect and honor for the Pakistani nation, they accepted this offer to do a ceasefire temporarily and get into some negotiation, because Iran also wants Pakistan to be on their side. Though in Pakistan, the state and the establishment are not on Iran's side for certain reasons. One is they are afraid of US because of other political issues which they have in the Middle East with the Arab rulers. But people are with Iran. Okay, so and as Imam used to say always, revolutions do not come by hakim from rulers. Revolution comes through people. There has to be millat to millat. Imam used to say millat to millat. People should talk to people. The Iranian nation has been talking to the Pakistani nation through the media, the way they have been expressing their love and gratefulness for the Pakistani nation. Similarly, the Pakistani nation has been doing this. So here, Pakistan playing this role of a negotiator went well in a way, though ideally it should have been Pakistan should have stood with Iran to fight in this war, shoulder to shoulder, along with Iran against the enemies of Iran. They couldn't do that. The state and the establishment is not in a position to do that. But at least instead of going against Iran, they extended their hand towards ceasefire. They supported, and even now they are not controlling any donation campaigns in Pakistan. Otherwise, state would control, like it's happening in the parts of the world. They're not allowing donations to go to Iran. In other countries where we are, we see that Iranian embassies are not allowed to take funds for supporting the Iranian people directly through bank account transfers or anything. It's all cash if someone wants to give. But Pakistani nation, Pakistani state has at least done this much, that they have kept it open, and they have restarted the trading system as well, where certain commodities can be exchanged across the borders. So that's a positive step which came over here from Pakistan's side. And another good thing which happened for Pakistan in this was that the tarnished image of Pakistan across the world got to a certain extent rectified, and Pakistan got some honor and respect in the eyes of, and globally basically, for the people, that a nation has stepped in to establish peace, and they're playing some active role. Instead of just being allies to the Arabs, they have stepped beyond that, and at least, even if not directly but indirectly, they have displeased and they have upsetted their Arab neighbors. Now Allah knows better how they are going to again please them, or this distance is going to increase. We pray to Allah that this enmity should increase between Pakistan and the Arab nations, and they should be distanced the same way Iran is. They should become like this, and we pray to Allah that that should happen, inshallah. That they don't become the pawns of these tyrant nations who are supporting Israel, who are supporting Mossad on their lands over there. So that's what is about Pakistan. So the one of the beneficiaries of this negotiation, Iran didn't achieve anything except that there's still a pause in the war. The war has not yet started. I mean, war means attacks that not started on Iran, but already plans are going on. Blockade has started, though they are claiming that blockade has started. And Iran is going to retaliate if the blockade starts over there. That's already a message which has been delivered that we will not allow this is maritime piracy and we will control it and we will not allow this to happen. So if this continues, this blockade, then something will happen. And Trump has no other way. You can see the frustration of Trump. A week before, he was telling, I am going to destroy the Iranian civilization. After the ceasefire, why is he not going back to the same stand that the ceasefire is not done? So I should just go and do the same thing which I was planning to do at that time. He knows very well what would be the impact of this if he does something silly over here. So now he has come out with this stupid solution that if we don't get our tankers out, no one else can also get it. Either all or none, which is again stupidity which he's trying to do. Though he has some other interest that he wants the oil market to crash over here, the barrels to reach 200, and there are various other benefits which are going to come to US over there indirectly, if not directly. Though people will suffer. At the end of the day, people are suffering. In India is suffering because of LPG. Other nations are suffering. Inflation is even in the Middle East. The inflation has gone on normal commodities 200%, 300% right now. It's that level. So you can see the impact in 1 month's time. If Hormuz doesn't open, the world will see a big impact coming up. And that's what Iran also wants. That if you do not allow us to live peacefully, then the world will also not live peacefully. Because everyone is responsible. One tyrant, one hooligan like Trump is destroying the entire world. And there are 250 plus nations who are just sitting. They're not doing anything. They're not taking any actions against this one person. They can't control this one person. Is it so monopolar, like a dictatorship across the world that one person is governing the world? No, they will have to do something. Specifically, China, Russia, they have to do something. Yeah. So that's something from my side. If there are any questions, and all we can continue.
Thank you. Mohsin bhai, coming back to you, as you were mentioning, there are bigger fish being fried in terms of like in the curtain of behind these, you can say behind these negotiations or ceasefire, this quietness has something which is apparently hidden or something unhidden, you may say. And the other thing, relationship between US and Israel at the moment. I mean, when we were looking at the negotiations and talks were going on, it was also being mentioned by officials, Iranian officials, that these in between those negotiations, there was some kind of influence of Israel as well. So this is not America first policy at the moment which is going on. This is like Israel first policy which is going on. So how do you see what are the, because the time is really short, we have like 30 minutes left, so 15 minutes I'll give you to conclude your uh, most important key takeaways if you wish to add what most Arifai has said earlier. If you want to add anything you can, or and you can conclusively give your analysis on the whole situation. Are we going to see very strong war, or what kind of future this region is going to see? And what is don't you see that like America is isolated now, like in if we look at it globally, because America wanted to change regime in Iran, but at the moment when we look at America diplomatically, and even from the perspective of war goals and other ways, if I mean public opinion is also against it, US. So how do you see this isolation as well? So what are your conclusive remarks on the whole situation and the future it holds?
So, to begin with, my narrative, I think, often focuses on one policy called the UN Agenda 2030. So, if you analyze the UN Agenda 2030 with any depth, what you begin to realize is that there is a very clear-cut plan for the what is now known as the Epstein class. You can call them money mafia, you can call them the Epstein class, call them the parasite elitists, but there is a structure that operates on a level which is transnational and which goes above nationalities. It involves tangibly institutions like, for instance, BlackRock, that are worth $13 trillion, more than the GDP of most countries that you and I would consider nations. They have immense influence culturally, politically, socially. They are the ones who also pretty much drive the culture within the military, the industrial military complex. So companies like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, all of these kinds of massive operations, which are both military and civil, they're all in the club. They're in this club. They're all under the umbrella of this club of very vastly wealthy individuals or institutions. Now, you can't, of course, ignore that, given that these people have such power and they exist, whether it's within the realm of China or whether it's in the Russian realm or whether it's the American realm. They move around. They are movers and shakers. Arguably, people like Kushner and Witkoff, who were at these negotiations, are also just frontmen who represent the interests of these parties. People like Netanyahu and Trump, it could be argued very easily that they are simply puppets that are operating, again, on behalf of this kind of international mafia. That's something which is there. And I would also say that the United Nations, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, you name it, the WHO, the World Health Organization, the IAEA, name any institution that was created post-Second World War by the victorious Allied forces. And you can see there's total corruption within those institutions. You can see that they've supported the oppression of the poor people, the global south. You can see that they've exploited, you can see that they've profited from the resource rape that the American boots on the ground with their military have overseen. You've seen that they've supported empire, they've supported Israel, they've covered up for Israel, they support them on the UN General Council. They never really prosecute Israel in any way. They've presided over a genocide. So these very powerful forces, and they also manifest themselves very clearly through people like Miriam Adelson, for instance, who stood up in the Knesset with Donald Trump, being praised by Trump for financing his entire election campaign. So it's not pie in the sky. This is not conspiracy. These are realities. These people exist. Her husband, Sheldon Adelson, paid and funded many things. People like George Soros pays for a lot of stuff. But even these people are just fronts. Bill Gates, I can bring into the equation. All of them, really. Wherever you go, whichever way you look. Then if you turn to the Musks of the world, you want to turn to Jeff Bezos, the head of Amazon. All of these individuals are fronts for a very dangerous club. That club was meeting this week. We're part of that club, the Bilderbergs. Again, these secret private meetings, the Round Table, the Bilderbergs, these are all realities. But because these clubs are not accessible to us, because Western media also doesn't really pay any attention deliberately, because that media also is funded and financed. Here in Britain, for instance, the funded and financed by the same parasite, Epstein class. I'll give you the examples of, say, for instance, I don't know, Rupert Murdoch. Who do you think he really operates on? Who does his empire owe its power to? The same money mafia elites. So I'm bringing these people into the equation because they also then have a tangible effect on world policy, not in terms of only in terms of geopolitics, but in terms of geoeconomics, in terms of our social and cultural and spiritual realities, because they have such power in terms of media, in terms of narratives, in terms of propaganda, in terms of a hold on the state's scene, of course, is not as kind of clean cut as people used to think, certainly in the West. Democracy here, they can easily see that the likes of the Jewish lobby, the Jewish Zionist lobby, has a massive control on parliament. And of course, secretly, of course, these moneyed groups have huge influence as well. So having brought these guys into the equation, what's their role in this current scenario? Well, they make money out of war, and they can make money out of destruction, and they can make money in peace. And their primary purpose is money and power. In this current situation, provoking Iran, which was completely unnecessary. The Americans did not need to do this. They know perfectly well that the Islamic Republic of Iran simply wants its own sovereignty. It doesn't want to be threatened. It doesn't want to be surrounded by US bases and constantly subjected to regime change, color revolutions. It doesn't want, bullying. It doesn't want its independence taken away. And it's made a stand on that basis. And because it has a strong Shia Islamic political ideology as well as spiritual, base, it's perfectly constructed as a nation to be a resistance force, and it's become the primary resistance force. And if you look at Hezbollah, it's got the same constitution, the same sort of spiritual, political ideology, the same narratives. They all center around Imam Hussein al-Islam, standing against oppression, looking at the Yazids of our time and taking them on. And of course, because of this, there's this kind of dark Epstein class, usurious, resource grabbing, rapacious, barbaric, savage machine, imperialist machine, has come up against a force which has a morality and an ethics, which means it has to stand up against this kind of oppression. It's geared for that. And what you've seen is that being played out. But of course, that also could be, technically, if you look at the Agenda 2030, a way for this Epstein class to use the Islamic Republic of Iran and anybody else that resists the American military industrial complex, etc., or the Zionist killing machine, as a way of disrupting the world. One of the things I've argued is that depopulation is one of the objectives of the transhumanist emerging, what would you call them? Feudal capitalists. These techno-feudal capitalists that are emerging. One of the objectives of these people is the cutting down of population. They don't like the fact that there's 8 billion people, and why not? Well, they've got AI and robots and all sorts of other technology coming up. So think about it from their point of view. They're trying to construct a world, a new world, a world in which they can have more surveillance, more control, more power, and they don't need the same number of humans which was required for the classic capitalistic model. You needed people who were consumers, and you need people who were producers within that model. Well, that is not so necessary if you've got lots of machinery and AI and all sorts of other technology which can replace human beings. So if they have this kind of weird dream, these are Malthusian eugenicist folk, people like Bill Gates are well known to be coming from that kind of mindset. Yuval Harari of the WEF is known to be of that ilk. You know that Klaus Schwab, who headed the WEF, was also of that thinking: depopulation, depopulation, depopulation. And of course, you know now who's the head of the World Economic Forum is our friend Larry King, who's again Larry Fink, who is the head of the BlackRock. So you have to join the dots here. What is their interest? They don't care whether they destroy the world and remake it, because their economic system was collapsing. The idea of forever growth and hyper-capitalism's desire to constantly grow. This has essentially reached a limit. And I think that partly what worries me is that they want destruction. They want a kind of collapse of the economy so that they can restart and reset, which is what they called it, the Great Reset. They want the Great Reset. And if they're still pushing that, and America is a tool for this process, and then using Iran as the method to be able to create, if you like, this great war, it would not surprise me if that's exactly what they're doing, because there's nothing logical and nothing sensible about what Trump's doing, blockading, attacking Iran, causing war, allowing the Israelis to do this genocide. This is all completely irrational, illogical. It doesn't even serve the Americans' purpose for that, from my point of view. So whose purpose does it serve? I think it serves the Epstein class. I think it serves the parasite money mafias. I think that they want war. I think a third world war is on the cards. It's now down to the Chinese and the Russians how they play their cards, because they're being provoked, of course, more and more. And it's whether the Chinese and Russians are also genuinely independent, sovereign outfits, and whether they are also independent of this parasite Epstein class, which is going to also make a big difference in terms of where the world goes. Nobody could predict what's going to be the outcome, but it seems as though these kinds of rapacious forces, they want destruction, whether it ends up in their own interests or whether it ends up in the interests of the Epstein class. That's for everybody to make their minds up. I could go deeper into all the policies of Agenda 2030, which, by the way, Ayatollah Khamenei rejected, but some neoliberal elements within Iran still actually are pushing covertly, which I've kind of recently been very disappointed by. But Agenda 2030 is all about LGBT, it's about faith equality, it's about disrupting family, it's about taking away our chain of resources and the sustenance that the world has. It's about taking over more land. It's about raping water resources for AI purposes and not for human beings. There are many things which are very dangerous within that movement, and even nations, I think, and leaders and the people are all being subjected to, I think, a tyranny which they can't see quite often, and we see only the front of that tyranny, which is maybe famine, COVID-19, or we see wars inflicted on people, and we go for that discussion because we're left then fighting over these issues, and we react and react and react. They keep throwing things at us to disrupt us, whether it's global economic and things like famine, whether it's more viruses, whether it's more warfare over wars. You know, they got us trapped in this kind of conflict, and the cultural wars between genders, the confusion that people have got in terms of identity crises and things, and emotional and mental crises around the world. You know, there's a lot of attack going on in humanity, and it's this parasite class, this Epstein parasite class, which are behind the bulk of it, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you so much, Muslim Bhai. Agarif, what are your final conclusive remarks? Especially, I mean, Agenda 2030 is also obviously it looks like it's a multi-layer plan in which the war is also a part of that whole plan, and obviously the other things which Muslim Bhai has also mentioned. So, what do you see the future of this region and the presence of US in that region and future of Israel? And are we going to see the Third World War very soon, or what kind of future do you see in the region? And what are your conclusive thoughts about the whole situation? What we should really understand and know about the whole situation, so that, like as Muslim also mentioned in his point of view, that we are just reacting on the certain issues which we see and we react, but the real agenda which is going on underneath is also important to understand. So how do you see the whole situation? What are your conclusive points? I can't hear you.
Sorry, yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, as far as the 2030 agenda, or what we call it as one world order, which is there, they want a single world order where one entity, which is definitely US, who wants to, or the Zionist, you can say, they want to govern the world, which is part of their ideology as well. They want to have one governance in the world, similar to Mahdaviyat, but with a difference over here. Mahdaviyat doesn't believe in killing everyone and establishing your governance. It is about everyone having justice in under a system whose access is based on justice and fairness, because no other worldly systems gives you justice to that extent which Islam is giving you. Hence, Islam has to dominate. It's not because Islam is a religion, it has to dominate. So that's a difference over here. But the Zionists, no, they just want to govern based on strength, based on power, and they consider themselves as the only race which has the rights to survive and rights to live, and no one else has the rights to live. Though they have sort of, in a cosmetic manner, promoting India also as one of their friends. But these are all lies again. Eventually, it's them themselves as Zionists, no one else. So, as a part of this agenda of one world order, they want one single economy governing the world, where they're getting a threat from China. They want one military power governing the world, and they want one and to govern the world with certain elites who will govern the world. They definitely want a population to be completely under control. Okay, they don't want big populated states like Pakistan, India, and African countries and all where the population is very high. This population has to be killed either through bioterrorism, through vaccinations and these things, or through wars, which is like nuclear wars, which can destroy completely a country or a city within no time. So they are aiming at all these kind of things. But coming to how whether it will be a third war or how do we see, there was an analysis given by a Chinese, I would say, journalist or someone. He does a lot of analysis. It was like almost 25 minutes. Someone told me to listen to him, definitely listen to him. So I was listening to him. He was completely for 20 minutes presenting what US is planning, what US can do in this scenario, what they can do in that scenario. But we are forgetting one side of it. What is Allah's plan over here? What is Allah's Sunan al-Ilahi over here? We are looking at what they are planning, but we are not looking at what Allah's plan is over here. And that is also very important to consider, which we see over here, the face of Allah, the Wajhullah at this time in this moment is Iran. Iran is the face of Allah, means Allah's system on earth. Okay. So there, if you start to look from both the perspectives, they have their plan, Allah has a plan, and we can see in last 40 days what they planned for. Completely nothing worked out for them. The only thing that worked out for them was that they could inflict some physical blows in terms of life and infrastructure damage to Iran. Nothing on the ideology. In fact, a big mistake they did was they strengthened the ideology to that extent that what Iran in 40 years could not achieve in terms of the desire of Imam Khomeini to export the revelation, that got achieved in 40 days. Everyone in the world knows about the Islamic revolution. They are not analyzing. There are research going on that what is this? What is this ideology? What is this faith? How can this nation really fight like this? Like on the night when Trump is declaring that we are going to bomb all the power stations, the Iranian nations are besieging, are circling around the power stations. They're sitting over there. And where is this coming from? If a nation is not having fear of death, there's an ideology behind that. What is that ideology? No, they couldn't damage the ideology. In fact, they have strengthened the ideology. No, and this is what is makr of Allah, that they are not realizing what they are doing. At this point, if you go in a calculative way, if someone is in place of Trump, who has some sense, little sense, which he doesn't have, they should back off at this stage and not allow Iran to strengthen and become so strong. They are doing it themselves now. Now the analysis, even those who are not religious, they clearly say that world is not having, first it was like US, China, and Russia as three powers. Now there is a fourth power, which is Iran. At least the fourth power the world is accepting, if not the first power. Okay, they're accepting it, that Iran is a fourth superpower in the world now, which is there. So who has created this superpower? Iran for 40 years couldn't become a superpower on their own. It's this mistake which they have done, Israel and US, who has got Iran to this level where they demonstrated their power. It was not that they did not have that power. They were not getting an opportunity to demonstrate it, which this war has given them this opportunity. And not even the war, I would say, only one person, his efforts of 80 years, 85 years, 80 years of his efforts, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei Shaheed, his sacrifice really got this paradigm shift in the entire world scenario. Militarily, now it is changing economically, politically, ideologically, everything has changed. So we need to start to work and capitalize on this front as much as we can to promote this ideology, which has now manifested itself in a practical form. In the past, we used to sit and give lectures and debates about what is Wilayat-e-Faqih, what is Islamic government, how a minority can dominate a majority in terms of faith, how religion can govern the world, how all these things are going to happen, how will Imam Mahdi come and fight, which is a small power, number of Shias in the world, and how is he going to fight the final war. Now we can see Everything is possible. Everything is front of our eyes. It has been manifested very clearly. So I wouldn't say the world is heading towards the third world war. It is heading towards the last final war, which is definitely going to establish truth and justice across the world. And humanity will revive. What has now happened in this era in last 3 years, humanity has died and humanity's revival has started. You can see Western editors, Western journalists, media persons, they are speaking. In Pakistan, the journalists always were slaves and puppets of the state. But now you can see there are journalists who have cropped up and speaking against the system. They're speaking against Saudi. The foreign minister of Pakistan, Khwaja Asif, he made a tweet that Israel is the most accursed nation on the earth, then he had to delete it because of the pressure. So this thing is coming out. Who has got this out? This war, this shahada, these sacrifices, these children of Menab, they have awakened the world. And now this spark which has come up, which is now not just a spark, but a fire, it has to turn into a flame. We need to bring that ideological revolution across the world and capitalize on this. The Iranians have done their part. They have played their part very well. They're excellently they have done it, and they're still doing it. They're still doing it. Now we have to play our part and not just do just calculations, what is going to happen, whether it will be world war, whether it will be next war. No, just work on this ideological front. Let's promote it. Let's build it, and events and incidents will start to roll as per divine customs, as per divine sunan ilahi, and you will see how things are going to change. Kam min kalil in fi'atan, as Quran says, we give success to a minority over a majority, bi iznillah, with izn of Allah. Izn doesn't means a permission, izn means a policy, an executable policy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the policy that when you show istiqamat, when you show perseverance, Allah sends malaika to help you. Allah tells the malaika to go and give them bashara. The malaika are the causes. These people, this humanity, those people who have got awakened humanity, who are speaking against tyranny, they are the malaika of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Ayatul Jawad Amuli has said, the Iranian nations are malaika of Allah. They are angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who have come to support. Similarly, we all can become malaika of Allah. So you can see the effects. I'll just 2 minutes. In Middle East, what is happening right now? A, a complete crackdown is happening on Shias. Every day, 40 to 50 Shias are getting deported from UAE. We know people in Kuwait now, every day, one or two, they're very limited Shias over there, Pakistani Shias, Indian Shias. They are arrested. No news for weeks for them now. They're all getting arrested. UAE is arresting people like left, right, and center. Just looking, they stop people in the car on the road. If your name is Ali, Hussein, Fatima, gone, finished. You're out. What is this? This is the hatred which they are demonstrating now because of the defeat which they have faced. So this shows that where this is going towards, whatever they plan, everything is going to fail. That's for sure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has demonstrated his power through this nation. And innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. His power is over everything. Everything, inshallah. And we need to play our role. I think one of the things which I am always concerned, which I mourn every day, every night, and every prayer is that this nation has done so much. What have I done? Nothing. I'm even so unfortunate that I am not present over there. At least if I would have been present over there, at least maybe shahadat or little support, whatever we could have done. But still, Allah gives opportunity to everyone, and we should hunt for those tawfiqat, hunt for those opportunities wherever we can get to become part of this mission, and that would make us successful and give us salvation in this life and hereafter, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Aga Arif Rizvi, and thank you so much, Muslim Bhai. Really grateful for your time. And here we have to end the show with a message of hope and strength and unity among all of us as a human being. For the sake of justice, truth, and humanity, we all have to unite together, no matter where we come from, what we do, where we are. We have to stand unite against the tyrants and oppressors, inshallah. Thanks a lot for watching us today, and I will take a leave with a message of hope, and I will pray that we all be able to become the true companion of Imam of our time, inshallah. Look after yourself and everyone around you. I'll take a leave. Allah Hafiz.